What's up, YouTube? What's up? So in this video, the title is self-explanatory. I know that for pretty much the entire time I've been on YouTube, I've always said that I thought that Michael Jordan was the GOAT. But now I'm beginning to really have serious doubts about that opinion, and I'm leaning more and more toward Wilt Chamberlain. What's good, Joe? What's good, Joe Johnson? What's up, EA32? I think you knew. Hope you enjoy the content I put on this channel, man. So yeah, I'm really beginning to lean toward Wilt Chamberlain being the GOAT, man. I really am. Just the more I've read about the NBA at that time when he played, um, I've opened my eyes to a lot of things that he had to deal with. And when you go and do your own research and not listen to, these talking heads on television, who most of them have agendas, you know what I'm saying? You can learn a lot of things and not be programmed to think a certain type of way. Oh, it's your birthday. It's your birthday. You mind me asking which birthday is it for you? I got a couple of months until I hit mine. I got about 4 more months. What's up, Ja'Cory Rural? What's up, Khalid? Yeah, Joe. 50.4 points, 25.7 rebounds, 1961-62 season. But he didn't win MVP that year. It went to Bill Russell. I think Bill Russell averaged something like 18 points and maybe 19 rebounds or something like that. But Boston won, I think, 60 games that year, something like that. So they gave it to Bill Russell, and that was one of the things back then. They a lot of times they rewarded, as they do now, they reward who they feel is the most impactful player on the best team, rather than oftentimes giving it to the best player or the most dominant player. Oh, you 17. Okay. Yeah, so you're still in that age bracket where you're looking forward to your birthdays. Like with me, once I hit 21, it wasn't like I was like looking like I was rushing for it, you know what I'm saying? Once you hit 21, you know, you still look forward to them, obviously, but it's not the same, the same like exhilaration, because you looking for a milestone. 18, you consider it legally adult in most situations, you know. Well, when I was growing up, when you turn 18, you could buy tobacco products. Now they pushing it to 21. 21, you could drink, you know. Happy man, what's up? How are you? So how am I? I'm pretty good. You know what I'm saying? I can't complain. You know what I'm saying? It's always a blessing to be alive. You know what I'm saying? I'm doing pretty good in my personal life, so I can't really complain right now. Jesus Christ is the Lord said, I went from thinking I would be a superstar in the 60s to realizing I wouldn't make the league in the 40s by doing research. Um, well, the, I'm not going to sit here and act like in the 40s and early 50s it was the best basketball, but during the 1950s, the NBA made drastic improvements. Like the skill level improved a lot. I would say starting around 1952, 53, it started improving a lot. Like the 40s, it wasn't that great, but you still had to be an athlete. You still had to be able to perform. I don't think that we saw the best athletes out there because of the sotto voce segregation that was going on. I mean, it wasn't like official, but it was a unspoken rule that they weren't drafting black players. And then when you started seeing guys like Sweetwater Clifton and geez, man, I'm forgetting some of these dudes' names. He died a couple of years ago. When you start seeing some of these guys, I don't want to call them tokens because they're not tokens, but when the league started making gestures of tokenism and started drafting black players, but still not giving them any minutes because they thought the fans wanted to see white people, they were still committing, still egregious racism. It wasn't until you started seeing Bill Russell turn around the Boston Celtics because they needed a defensive anchor and a rebounding presence. And then they saw what Wilt Chamberlain did, and then they saw Elgin Baylor destroying the league. That's when you started seeing that breakdown, that system breakdown. Let me see, I got some comments. You said crazy thing about the 61-62 season for Wilt. It's probably his fifth best season. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people just reference the 50-point season, but I mean, shit, you had some seasons where Wilt was putting up. I like when he was playing with the Sixers because it was a balanced Wilt. He could still go off for 50 and 60, but he played with actually a really good team for once. 67, he didn't have any injuries, and he was putting up 24 points, 23 rebounds, something like 8 assists a game. It wasn't documented, but he was averaging 8 or 9 blocks a game. So think about that for a second, y'all. Think about this for a second. Wilt was having seasons where he had a season or some seasons where he was averaging 20 points, rebounds. Then he was averaging almost 10 assists, almost 10 blocks. So think about that for a second. Okay? I think the man's name was Gabe Poland. He was the statistician for the Philadelphia 76ers in the for a long time, for decades. Died maybe back in 2013 or something. He documented. He made it his business to document 112 games, and he tracked all of Wilt Chamberlain's stats. The league wouldn't do it, but he did it. And in the 112 games that he tracked, Wilt averaged 8.8 blocks per game. And this was Wilt when he was with the Sixers, when he weighed about 300 pounds. Now, when he came into the league, Wilt was about 275, 260, 275. Okay? So he was lighter, springier. That's when Wilt had that 50-inch vertical leap. So Wilt probably even had some seasons when he was lighter, when he was averaging damn near 10 blocks a game. So when we look at Oscar Robertson being the official leader of 181 triple-doubles, we know he's not really the triple-double leader. It's Wilt Chamberlain. You just have to have common sense in your head. As a matter of fact, Bill Russell probably has more triple-doubles, just Bill Russell. He probably has at least as many, if not even more triple-doubles than Oscar Robertson did, just because of the fact that he got double-digit rebounds every game, most of the times reached double-digit points, and had double-digit blocks, especially early in his career. But Wilt probably had at least 400 triple-doubles, maybe 500 triple-doubles. Let me read some of you guys' comments here. Oh yeah, Honcho Gotti, you said his playoff run has to be top 5 best ever in 1967. Didn't he average something like I'm kind of fuzzy with the numbers, but didn't he have one series where he averaged something like, I want to say 29 points, 31 rebounds, uh like 9 assists, unofficially something like 9 blocks, or just some unbelievable numbers that you think would be off of a video game. Even when you take into account the fast pace of the era. Nobody's close to Wilt Chamberlain. Nobody's even in his stratosphere putting up numbers like that. Coach Wayne says Wilt Chamberlain has the highest points per game, 34.5. Well, you mean for a career at one point? Well, at one point, I think if you go from 1959, his first year, to 1964, I believe it is. I think, no, 63. I think if you look at his scoring average after those seasons, it's damn near 40 points a game. And even after the scoring titles, after 1966, when his scoring slowly went down because the league was trying to do everything to slow him down, widening the lanes from 12 to 16 feet to make him less dominant. And, in college, they took away a rule where when he went to Kansas, his teammates, when they were like out of bounds, like trying to inbound the ball, they could actually throw the ball over the backboard and Wilt would catch it for a dunk. And the NCAA got rid of that, say, no, you can't do that anymore. Then another thing they got rid of the NCAA is goaltending. Well, actually, I take that back. They got rid of that in the 40s under Mikan. They did it in the 50s when they saw how dominant Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain were in college. And they prepared for that shit, and they got rid of goaltending in the NBA. But another thing they got rid of when Wilt Chamberlain played with Kansas is, we all know Wilt was not a great foul shooter, okay? It got exponentially worse throughout his career. He started off as like a 60% foul shooter, and it just got worse and worse. I think it's a combination of him getting stronger due to the weightlifting, and also I think mentally, right? But when Wilt first was in college, he and this is documented. This ain't me making up shit. Wilt would actually take the goddamn ball, the same thing that Michael Jordan, and Julius Erving and everybody else get all this praise and adulation for jumping from the foul line, in the slam dunk contest. Wilt was routinely doing that when he was shooting free throws, because the rule just says your feet can't touch the paint. So he would take a running start, jump from the foul line, and dunk his free throws. And the NCAA said, first of all, this can't be humanly possible. And number two, you can't do that because what you're doing is not humanly possible, and it's unfair. Oh, I see what you're saying, Coach Wayne. Franchise leader in the playoffs. Oh, with the Warriors. The locker room app. Okay, I'm gonna look into that. Wilton 62. Yeah. This has been a process for me, man. Like, I grew up just like anybody else that was a Bulls fan. And I still think a lot of Michael Jordan. I still think he has a case for the GOAT. But over time, when you read about Wilt Chamberlain, and not only his exploits, but what the league did to try to diminish his dominance and how much his dominance scared the NBA, you really have to look at it from a different perspective. Another thing that people always tend to bring up about Wilt that's not true is, number one, that Wilt was a giant beating up on midgets. When Wilt Chamberlain played, first of all, he wasn't even the tallest player in the NBA. Okay. I think there was a guy named, I forget his last name. I think his name was Swede. I'm getting a little fuzzy with some of the stuff, but Swede Holbrook. I think his name was Swede Holbrook or something like that. He was 7'3". Oh, but everybody was 6'4" back then. No. Average height in the NBA back then when Wilt played was 6'6". The average height today, 6'6". But this is the lies they tell you, people. These are the lies that they tell you. I've been telling you guys, my enemy is not LeBron James or Kobe Bryant or any of these other people. My enemy is the media. Yeah, Sweet Holbrook. When Wilt played, he had to contend with not only Bill Russell, but Willis Reed, Walt Bellamy. A little later on, Elvin Hayes, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Artis Gilmore, Bob Lanier. Remember when Wilt played, there was between 8 to 17 teams. So the league was only half, at most, when he left in 73, half the size it is now. And when he first started, it was only a fourth of the size it is now. And you already had more Hall of Fame centers then than there is now, or soon to be Hall of Fame centers. Wes Unseld, if I haven't mentioned him. We had a lot of competition at the center position. And the thing about the Celtics is, I don't mean no disrespect to Bill Russell. All right. He's a legend. He's a Hall of Famer. But people have to look at that team and be realistic. Okay. Now, I'm not saying every single one of the 12 Hall of Famers that Bill Russell played with were like top tier legends. Maybe some of them did benefit from playing with Bill Russell. But I do know this. K.C. Jones, who's an underrated head coach, by the way, all these guys played roles. You know what I'm saying? All these guys had defined roles on those Celtic teams. You weren't going to have anybody, you know what I'm saying, just playing ISO a la James Harden and all these guys today putting up astronomical numbers. Not with that team, not with that system. I know this. K.C. Jones was one of the premier perimeter defenders and playmakers of that era. Bob Cousy was the Steve Nash of his era, arguably a better rebounder. All right. Bill Sharman was the Steph Curry of his era. Bill Sharman was one of the first perimeter guys to shoot 40% from the floor. That doesn't sound like much today, but you got to remember when Bill Sharman first started playing, the average field goal percentile per player was something like 33, 35%. So this is a little guy shooting 40%, leading the NBA in free throw percentage. So like I say, he was the the Stephen Curry of his day. Sam Jones was the most clutch player of that era. Tom Heinsohn won Rookie of the Year in 1956, 1957, not Bill Russell. Yeah, Nate Thurman. Thank you, Immortal. Another center. So my point is, whenever they used to play against one another, the Boston Celtics and let's say the Philadelphia Warriors, that's when Wilt was at his scoring peak. Wilt Chamberlain routinely won his matchup against Bill Russell. Okay? Offensively. Head to head, I think Russell averaged 14 points and 23 rebounds. Okay? Shot only 37% from the floor. Why a guy that's 6'9" playing around the basket only made 37% of his shots, as athletic as Bill Russell was, I don't know. Wilt Chamberlain against Bill Russell averaged 29 points and 30 rebounds. Almost 30 points and 30 rebounds. He almost averaged 30 points and 30 rebounds and shot about 50% from the floor. Even though sometimes routinely he was double and triple team because guys would come out and help. John Havlicek, maybe Heinsohn come out and help. So who was shutting who down? Didn't Wilt score 62 points against Bill Russell one game? But they tell you that he shut Wilt Chamberlain down. But see what was deciding those games? By the way, most of those series, despite Bill Russell having all that Hall of Fame help, those series used to go down to the wire. 6 games, 7 games. Matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think in 4 series that Wilt had against Bill Russell, in those 7 games of the series, the Celtics won by a combined total of 9 points. So they only won those games on average by 2 points. So this notion that the Celtics were beating Wilt Chamberlain ass, that's not true. But the difference in those series was the guard play. Guy Rogers, an old-ass Paul Arizin versus Bob Cousy, Bill Sharman, and especially Sam Jones. That was the difference in the series. They couldn't contain Boston's backcourt, and that's what won those series. As a matter of fact, in the few series that Bill Russell did dominate in the finals is when he was going up against the Lakers. Why? Because even though Elgin Baylor and Jerry West were dominant, they ain't had no goddamn center. So those were the games that Bill Russell put up 30 points and 25 rebounds or 40 points and 30 rebounds. But he wasn't doing it against Wilt and Norman Chamberlain. These are the facts. Okay? Yes, yeah, Sean. They did serious help defense on Wilt. Now, I know his biggest Achilles is this perception that he didn't play well in some pivotal games and that he only won 2 championships. However, you have to be realistic about some things, all right? Number one, as we all know, it's much harder for, especially in a series, when you get familiar with a player or team and what they're doing, their schemes, whatever, right? It's much harder to stop a perimeter player than it is a post player because perimeter player almost always has the ball from the get-go, right? LeBron, Jordan, Kobe, they have that advantage. They have the ball in their hands. Wilt has to get the ball. So if Boston or whoever was playing against Wilt on those teams in the playoffs, if they're playing ball denial and preventing Wilt from getting the ball, and then they could legally triple team Wilt, yeah, his numbers aren't going to be that great, especially if he don't have anybody else in that team that's a dynamic scorer. That was especially true with the Warriors. He didn't really have anybody else in that team that was a dynamic scorer. But let me tell you this too, though. Before Wilt Chamberlain got there, the Warriors had a downturn. The Warriors won the championship in 1956 when they had a prime Paul Arizin and Neil Johnson before injuries in his career. Neil Johnson, one of the best power forwards in the 1950s. Might do some look him up to see. He's another guy that's underrated. But after that, they fell down. They were a team not making the playoffs. And if I'm not mistaken, the first year Wilt Chamberlain got there, they improved, I think, something like 15 games his first year. Now, remember, back in those days, I think the seasons were 66 games or 68 games. There might have been 72 games, but no. I think there was 72 games. It was 72 game seasons back by that time. So they improved. Boston was already a good team before Wilt Chamberlain got there. Before Bill Russell got there. They just lacked a defensive presence and rebounding. But they were a good team. They almost kind of remind me of the Houston Rockets the last couple of years with Russell Westbrook and James Harden, but they just weren't a really good defensive team overall, and they sucked at rebounding. So Bill Russell fit that role perfectly, and Red Auerbach knew that, and the owner of the team knew that, and they went the extra mile to acquire Bill Russell. But Wilt was a more impactful player. I'm sorry. He was a more impactful player than Bill Russell. Now, some of the times that people criticize Wilt Chamberlain, for not showing up, you got to remember, though, Wilt's role was different down the stretch. By the time Wilt joined the Lakers, he was already transforming from being or transitioning from being a primary scorer to an all-around player to more or less being a rebounder and defensive presence. And in my opinion, he did a better job individually of doing that than Bill Russell. Why? Well, just because of the fact that he was more efficient. He transitioned to being more of a power guy. That was when Wilt was having seasons shooting 63%, 68%, 73% from the floor. And mind you, this isn't today's league where it's like it's a free pass to the lane or to a dunk. He had defensive resistance, but Bill Russell shot 44% from the floor for his career. A lot of those rebounds came from him getting back his misses 2-3 times. Wilt Chamberlain was just a much more, I think, impactful and more efficient player. Okay. And there's a lot of stuff I could talk about, man, but I want to listen to some of you guys' comments. Yeah. A lot of people think just that Wilt just dunked, but especially when he was younger, Wilt had a lot of different moves. Like you said, he had the mid-range game, a fadeaway, the jump hook, the dipper dunk. Yeah, power game, baseline dunk, drop step. Yeah, Wilt had a lot of moves. It's just that as he got older, and then Wilt suffered an injury. I think it was I believe it was during the 1969-70 season. He suffered a devastating knee injury that most people at that time will never be able to come back from. And the Wilt Chamberlain that we see with the Lakers was basically kind of playing off of one good leg. He's playing off of one good leg, and he still had a 35-inch, 36-inch vertical leap. And imagine that. Imagine that Wilt Chamberlain, who was the third or fourth, maybe even fifth at times, optional offense, was playing prime Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to a standstill, blocking his sky hook. Nobody really blocked his sky hook. Not really. I think maybe in the 20 years that Kareem played, his sky hook probably got blocked maybe 10 times at the most. And of the 10 times, Wilt probably did it more than anybody else. I don't agree with that, Rashawn. Rashawn said that Wilt was selfish in the 1960s LeBron James. Well, first of all, um, it's not that Wilt came into the league and just said, I'm going to shoot the ball 30-something times because I'm Wilt Chamberlain. He was just that unstoppable. And why would you not, if you're the coach of the Warriors, why would you not have Wilt Chamberlain shoot the ball? He's your most dominant player. It makes no sense. It's like Orlando with Shaq, but then again, Shaq had some help though. Shaq had Penny Hardaway and Nick Henderson and Dennis Scott. Wilt didn't really have guys like that by the time he came in there. Had Paul Arizin, but Paul Arizin was starting to show his age. You know what I'm saying? And Guy Rogers was a passer, not really a scorer. And some of the other guys on that team, they weren't really guys that you could just give the ball to and ask them to create something offensively. That wasn't their games. So Wilt Chamberlain kind of had to shoot the ball like that. Now, if you talk about the 50-point season, that was actually more Frank McGuire. I think who was the coach at the time. That was actually Frank McGuire's idea for Wilt to score that much. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the first couple of years, Wilt Chamberlain averaged 37.6 his rookie year. And then the second year, 1960-61, he averaged 38.4. But he noticed that during the regular season, the Celtics usually won by 6 to 8 points, right? So he said, well, if Wilt is getting 38 points a game and the Boston Celtics are beating us by like 7 or 8 points, maybe Wilt needs to average 50. Now, look, people got to remember this. That season, Wilt Chamberlain averaged 48.5 minutes per game. Players today are crying about averaging 36, 37 minutes a game. In this era, which is indeed fast-paced, but we're talking about the fastest-paced era in NBA history in the 60s, right? Where the league was averaging 118 points, 119 points a game. The Warriors were averaging 125 points a game. Breakneck pace. And to be honest with you, Wilt probably could have even averaged more than that. But Wilt complained, later on, he was like, in hindsight, they were killing him. Like, he didn't have any breaks. He was playing literally every minute of every game and overtimes. And the only breaks he had were doing timeouts. I don't think most players will find that fun, no matter how selfish they are. Nobody wants to play, a game when you're fucking dog tired, tongue hanging out your mouth, needing oxygen. But he did what was best for the team. And as his teams got better, when they acquired guys like Nate Thurman and others, right? His scoring went down. 50.4 to 44.8 to 36.9, 34.7. And then last year he won a scoring title, 33.5. So Wilt was not this guy that was just always overly concerned about his numbers. He was an offensive weapon, and that's what his best thing was. That was his best, what they felt was his best role. But then when he went to the Sixers and he had even more talent, he didn't care about winning scoring titles anymore. Whoa, 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 bro. Are you telling me to get my knowledge up? Are you serious? Let me tell you something. Um, there's a difference between sucking and being a decent team, but not championship. If you look, Boston was a decent team, a pretty good team, but they weren't a championship team. That's what I said. Okay? That's what I said. I said Bill Russell was a perfect complement to that team because they were poor rebounding wise and defensively. And also, let's not forget that the same year they acquired Bill Russell, they acquired Tommy Heinsohn, who was the Rookie of the Year. So let's not act like that's the only acquisition that they got that year. Oh, my bad, my bad. I'm like, I didn't get my knowledge up. But no, I'm not saying Boston. I'm not saying Boston sucked. Anybody that said that, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. But what I was trying to say is, Wilt turned the Warriors from being a poor franchise at that time to being a playoff team. Bill Russell with Tom Heinsohn, and then I think the next year, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the next year, Casey Jones joined them, who was Bill Russell's teammate in college. They made them a championship team. They made them a dynasty type team. But Boston was already a good team. They just weren't in the leagues. They just weren't on the level of the teams that was the best teams at the time. Like maybe the Royals. I think the Warriors won the title in '56, but I can't think off the top of my head who the best teams were. But Boston was not a bad team. They just weren't a team that was going to go to the championship. Well, I'm not going to say. Look, this is the thing. I don't want to make this a contest between Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell. I don't want to make this a Bill Russell shitting parade. That's not my intention here. I do think Bill Russell made players around him better. He was a very high IQ basketball player, very high IQ basketball player. If you read about some of the things he did on the court, um, he would first of all the things that people praise Draymond Green about, he was doing, but on a higher level. He would get guys out of their comfort zones. He would try to run you from a spot on the floor where you like to score, push you further out. If you're a guy that's more comfortable scoring in the low post, push you out to the high post, make you uncomfortable. If you were a big guy, he tried to make you tired. He would try to be offensively more aggressive, try to make you tired. One thing that he did that was very intelligent is he mastered the block shot, where most guys, even Wilt Chamberlain was doing this at first. They were trying to make it a show of dominance, alpha male strength, like blocking your shot out of bounds. Bill Russell would try to tap the shot to a teammate to initiate a fast break. So Bill Russell was doing a lot of smart things. Don't get me wrong. He did help that team. That's not my intention when I argue about Bill Russell versus Wilt. When I argue about Bill Russell and Wilt, I don't like this perception that has started since Wilt Chamberlain died, where a lot of people try to make it seem like, they have this narrative that Bill Russell was just whooping Wilt Chamberlain's butt all up down the court. And he was the ultimate player, but he sacrificed his game. No. Bill Russell, even people who scouted him thought that his offensive game was trash, okay? But they thought that he had a nose for the game of basketball or IQ. And they knew that he had a potential for defense and rebounding. But as a complete basketball player, look, people get on Bill Russell or Wilt Chamberlain for not being a great foul shooter, but Bill Russell was awful too. But nobody brings it up because they won. Why? Because he had a really, really good team. Now that is something that even Wilt Chamberlain said is true. He said there was something to be said about that. I'm in DMS like D says, just wish he had Russell's mentality. That is true. The only excuse I'm going to give Wilt Chamberlain is this, okay? When you're a guy who already, and when you're in high school, can bench press 400 pounds, and ultimately, according to people that knew him, and I'm talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger, players, professional weightlifters, these ain't just Cap, these are people that actually observed him. At his peak, he was able to bench press 550, 570. Okay. When you're this incredibly strong, when you're one of the strongest, probably 10 people on the planet, you kind of become concerned about literally killing people. I was talking to a friend of mine just now before I did this upload this live stream, because I had told him, I'm saying, I'm thinking about telling people I'm thinking Wilt might be the GOAT, you know what I'm saying? But there was this player named Gus Johnson, right? And he played for the Baltimore / I don't know if they were Washington yet when he played, but let's just say the Baltimore Bullets and then the Indiana Pacers later on, right? And Gus Johnson tried to dunk on Wilt Chamberlain. Now, Gus Johnson was 6'6" and like 230, 235. He was sort of like built like Charles Barkley, but more cut, more chiseled. You know what I'm saying? Strong, big, small forward, like huge. He tried to dunk on him. And Wilt Chamberlain blocked his shot. And Gus Johnson went down with a dislocated shoulder. From him trying to dunk on Wilt Chamberlain, trying to power dunk on him, and Wilt blocked him. And it's footage of it. It's footage of him falling down in agony from a dislocated shoulder. Now, if you can do that from blocking someone's shot, do you know how strong you have to be? So I think in the back of Wilt's mind, he played a finesse game because he was kind of afraid of hurting people. Plus, another reason why Wilt had to kind of have a finesse game is because the way that they called shit back then was different. Like, we all know when Shaq played in the 90s, Shaq loved to push his shoulder in people. You know what I'm saying? Shaq loved to dig that shoulder in the motherfucker and do his spin move and power dunk over your ass with his physical strength, right? With his physicality. But in the 60s, if he had did that move, it would always be called an offensive foul. So centers kind of had to develop an actual skill set. You kind of had to develop a jumper and other type of moves, or jump hook. That's why guys had all these array of moves back then, rather than just relying on brute strength. But it is something to be said about Wilt not having that same aggression that Bill Russell had. That I don't give a fuck type. Bill Russell was like that, and Bill Russell actually also played a mind game with Wilt too. He purposely conveyed a friendship with Wilt, just so that Wilt psychologically wouldn't be as aggressive against Bill Russell as he could have been. They were friends. Like they were best friends when Wilt Chamberlain played. When Bill Russell was playing, when Wilt played. They used to, I think Bill used to invite Wilt Chamberlain over his mother's house to eat dinner. They were friends. But Bill did this to disarm Wilt. And as soon as Bill Russell retired, he chewed Wilt Chamberlain out in public, saying Wilt didn't have it. There was an infamous situation that happened in the last finals that Bill Russell played in, 1969 NBA Finals, when Butch, I think his name is Butch Branvedikov, I think his name the coach. He hated Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain came out because I think he came out in the fourth quarter because his leg was hurting or something like that, right? And when Wilt tried to get back into the game, the coach wouldn't let him back in. And ultimately, Lakers lost that game. And I think they blew something like a 2-0 lead, I think, or a 2-1 series lead. I can't remember the spread, but they blew a lead. And everybody focused on Wilt not coming back in the game. And Bill Russell was like chewing him out, I think on a radio program or interview, something like that, saying that there's no way in hell I wouldn't have came back in that game. Fuck what the coach said. That's why he never won, because he doesn't have the desire, da. And Wilt Chamberlain was so hurt by that they stopped talking to each other for 20 years. Almost, I think about 20 years. And but there's something to be said about that. You say that, Tural, do you think the 60s and 70s and 80s was the purest form of basketball, because in basketball there was never supposed to be a three-point line and this fancy dribbling and all this fancy dunking? Well, look, people have their preferences. I think that the golden period of basketball was the 80s into the early to mid 90s. I like a three-point shot. I just think that it's gluttonous now. You know what I'm saying? What's supposed to be like a treat is gluttony. To shoot 35 threes a game per average, and then you have some teams that shoot it 40 something times. I just think that's analytics has just destroyed it. But one thing I'll say about the 70s, though, it was the best era to be a fan, because no team repeated in the 70s. 1970, it was the Knicks won the championship, 71, the Bucks, 72, the Lakers won, 73, the Knicks won again, but the 74, Boston won a championship just 5 years under Bill Russell. 75, the upstart Golden State Warriors won. In 76, Boston won again. People thought maybe they were going to be a little bit of a dynasty. But then in 77, Portland won. 78, the Washington Bullets won the championship. And in 79, Seattle. So it was a different, you felt like your team had a shot back then. But one of the negative aspects of the 70s, though, is that some people feel like the talent was kind of diluted because a lot of the players, well, some of the players at least, Zelmo Beatty, Rick Barry, George Gervin, Artis Gilmore, Julius Erving, some of the other guys I don't think, went to the NBA, but Roger Brown, the Roger, Skywalker, David Thompson, Dan Essel. A lot of these guys were over in the ABA. So some people feel like the talent in the NBA was sort of watered down. So, that's how I feel about the 1970s. Legendary says Wilt should have won in, I think, 69 or 70. I forgot which season, but he should have won. Yeah. I think you're talking about, I would say 70, the Lakers should have won the title. But my only problem with that is I don't like how Wilt gets singled out. It wasn't just Wilt. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't just, look, Willis Reed, I think he got injured in Game 5. But it was the rally around effect, that rally effect that happened, and the Knicks wound up, I think, either coming back and winning that game or something like that. They won that game. But then the reality of the situation hit them in Game 6. Wilt Chamberlain go off for 45 points. And this was when Wilt wasn't scoring anymore. But Wilt took advantage of the fact that Willis Reed wasn't there. He scored 45 points, and they won the game and went to Game 7. A lot of people talk about Willis Reed, making basically like saying he mentally got to Wilt coming out there and making the first 2 shots, right? But nobody talks about, or at least anymore, talk about Walt Clyde Frazier having the best game of his career. 36 points, 7 rebounds, 19 assists, I think 6 steals. I mean, damn. Nobody talks about that. What were Laker guards doing? You feel me? But everybody puts it on Wilt. But, okay, what were the guards doing? Getting burnt, right? You know what I'm saying? So I just don't know. And then in 73, you could argue the Knicks were younger, hungrier, and fresher. By 1973, Wilt was kind of done. West was damn near done. They kind of had gotten old by then, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I'm not saying that Wilt, there's nothing that you can criticize Wilt about, but there's players that got outplayed that are, in the conversation. Look, Kareem got severely outplayed by Moses Malone. 83 finals, right? I mean, just utter domination. But people don't hold it against Kareem because of his resume. Michael Jordan, it's a regular season game, but he got scorched. Well, really the Wizards, but still, they look at it as Jordan got scorched for 55 points by Kobe. Everybody has those type of games, man. LeBradford Smith, of all people, dropped 40 on Jordan. 37, I think. Back in 92, I think. I mean, everybody has those games, like everybody talks about Jordan's 63-point game, but then in game 3, I think they held Jordan to 7 and 19 shooting, 19 points. Everybody has games, man, where they just don't play well. I don't know. The thing about Wilt and Kareem, it's funny because at one point they had a great relationship. Wilt was Kareem's mentor in a lot of ways. He gave Kareem a lot of advice. It's just kind of sad how that relationship deteriorated. I don't know who was I, I don't know who was first, but I think if my memory serves me correctly, it went down like this. Wilt Chamberlain as an analyst, uh the few times he would analyze games, like maybe as a guest analyst, he kind of reminds me of Charles Barkley in that he says what he's feel. He's not like how some people are where they give an academic answer or a political correct answer. He tells you how he feels, right? So he would criticize Kareem's game. He would often criticize Kareem's rebounding and sometimes saying that he was soft. Like I've said before, Kareem didn't really like physical play. He didn't like going up against the Moses Malones or even an older Wilt in a lot of ways, but definitely Artis Gilmore. He could not stand going up against Artis Gilmore because Gilmore was physical beast like Wilt. And he would criticize him. He would praise him, but he would criticize him. And I think that criticism got under Kareem's skin, and that kind of started that war of words between the two. Kareem might be saying, well, Wilt never won any damn thing unless he had a good team around him. And then it got to that point where Kareem wrote that Dear Wilt Chamberlain letter. It got ugly, man. Yeah, I agree with that. Big men always hate on each other. Like, you know, um, everybody knows that if you watch basketball in the 1990s, Shaq used to always pick on David Robinson. He made up some story about about David Robinson not signing his autographs, and he pretty much admitted a couple years ago that was bullshit. He just like picking on him, man. Shaq's a bully. He see David Robinson, you know he's a nice guy, and the bully in him just want to fuck with him. You know what I'm saying? Like he know he had a dunk on David Robinson like that in that All-Star game, and wasn't that at San Antonio too? Wasn't that at San Antonio in '96? Man, you dunking that man at home like that, man. Come on, Shaq. But I remember Akeem Olajuwon got mad when they presented Dave Robinson with the MVP trophy before they had their conference final series. And Robert Ory said that's the first time he saw Olajuwon mad. He said, "That's my trophy." They're giving him my trophy. That's my MVP. And he said, "Oh shit." He said, "Oh shit." Akeem mad. He said, "Oh, Dave Robinson in trouble now." And we saw how he dominated Dave Robinson in that series. Yeah, but it's always a rivalry when it comes to centers. And that's nothing that's really missing in today's game, man. Like the rivalries. It's too much. I mean, I know it's a players' league and they are friends and all that, man, but it's just not the same without a rivalry, man. It's just not the same. Like I liked that there was a rivalry, and most of us liked when there was a rivalry between, even if it was not Cleveland versus Golden State, but Golden State versus LeBron, but it was a rivalry. You know what I'm saying? Kevin Durant versus LeBron. Like, even if it wasn't personal, at least it appeared to be a rivalry. I don't know. Maybe the younger generation is different, but his politics. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't care for Wilt's politics, man. But, look, I'm going to say this. We all have things about players that we don't like, okay? Um, Look, LeBron, he's a person that speaks out for his community. He's a person that speaks out on the plight of African Americans. But he is still, and I'm not disparaging him for this, he's a company man. Okay. He's only going to go but so far in some things he's going to say in public. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was a Muslim, and that's honorable. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar loved to fuck white women. I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying? Um, Wilt, the only thing I'm going to say in Wilt's defense about the Republican thing, and I know I'm like, man, you trying to cap for Wilt. Nigga, man, stop capping for Wilt. I mean, stop capping for him. I'm just going to say this. Remember, Wilt was born in 1936, okay? And he was born in the North, right? Pennsylvania. You got to remember, at that time, a lot of black people were still voting Republican because of the Lincoln factor. This isn't the civil rights era. A lot of black people, especially, it was actually more in the South, but also in the North, they voted Republican because of the ancestral ties with abolitionists and anti-slavery Republican Party. So that could be partially why Wilt Chamberlain was Republican. So we got to kind of take that into the context of his era. Having said that, though, he should have realized by the 60s and 70s that the Republican Party was changing and that Nixon was not for black people, okay? But he was for Nixon. Politically, I don't know if Wilt gets away with that shit in today's world. He wouldn't get away with that shit. Being for Nixon and for Reagan, he ain't getting away with that shit. You know what I'm saying? I don't think so. I have a feeling though that he probably wouldn't be for Trump though. I don't think he would be for Trump and shit. But I don't know. Hey, what's up, Billy? Like you say, you're watching your 10-month-old nephew and missed the first 40 minutes of this. Oh, I was just talking about why I think that Wilt Chamberlain should be in the GOAT conversation. I really do. I'm not saying that he is the GOAT, but he definitely should be in the conversation. And that I think that this notion that, well, it's LeBron, and I'm seeing this too now. I'm starting to see a lot more articles. Like back in the day, people used to make it almost like a fact that Jordan was the GOAT, which was bull. Even when I was the most hardcore Bulls fan and Jordan fan, I was like, wait a minute, whoa. That's an opinion. Okay. Everybody don't agree with that. But I'm seeing more and more articles now from LeBron stands that making it seem like it's a fact that LeBron is either the GOAT or number two. No, it don't. No, that's not definitive. That's not definitive. But I think that Wilt has a great case. You know, I mean, if they were tracking, I believe if they were tracking blocks for his whole career, he'd be the all-time leader in blocks. Bill Russell be number two. Nate Thurman probably would be number three. Kareem number four, and then Olajuwon number five. Right? If they were tracking triple doubles, I think Wilt would have at least 400 triple doubles. And I'm not just saying that pulling out my ass. That comes from the fact that Wilt averaged 30 points and 23 rebounds for his career. For his career, he averaged 4.5 assists. But when he was with the Sixers, he was having games where he averaged, season, he was averaging more like, 7 or 8 assists. So you have to think, how many triple doubles did he have in those seasons? When he's already giving you every night 2 of those 3 categories fully, 2 times over. So he probably had seasons where in 80 game schedules, I'm pretty sure he had at least 40 something games, maybe 50 something games with a triple double. I'm sure of it. 50 games with a triple double. Now you take the entire course of his career, yeah, I would say he probably had at least 400 triple doubles. That's why I always in my videos, I always say that Wilt probably is the unofficial triple double leader. So if we had these numbers, right? Because they credit Wilt with 78 triple doubles, but that's not the real number. That's not the real number because they're not including blocks. If they included all of his stats, I mean, I think his case would be even greater, man. Legendary. I don't think he has, but I think it's coming. I think it's coming. I think he'll be pressured to maybe say something. I think he will say something. I won't be surprised if it comes within the next year. Well, Will actually had a quintuple double. He had a game where he had, I believe, 20 points, 20 rebounds, maybe something like 15 assists, 10 blocks, and like 10 steals. Unofficially, okay? He had a game where he had a quintuple double. The only player in NBA history to do that. I think he had a game against the Detroit Pistons. Now, I think the NBA credits, I think it's is it Lynn Elmore? I think he's credited as having the most blocks in the game with 17, but I believe Wilt Chamberlain unofficially in a game against the Detroit Pistons had 28 blocks in the game. And that's the unofficial record. So, I mean, when you look at everything this man was able to accomplish on the basketball court, and Legendary pointed this out too. Look, man, people really need to do their research when they say stuff like, we didn't have any great athletes in the 60s. Look, Jim Brown retired as arguably, at the time, the greatest football player in NFL history. But not only was he arguably the greatest football player at the time, and still to this day, you can make an argument that he's the greatest running back ever, but he's the greatest lacrosse player ever. And Wilt Chamberlain, not only because you say he's the greatest basketball player ever, the man was a tremendous volleyball player. He was a tremendous athlete in general, tremendous shot putter, tremendous track and field athlete. He's arguably he has a case for the greatest singular athlete in history. Like, I'm not saying he is, but he has a case. I mean, can you think of another player? Seriously. Think about this, y'all. Can you think of another athlete that was still getting invitations to try out in the NBA when he was 50 years old? 50 years old. And he was still getting invitations to try out for the Nets. And I remember reading about when Wilt Chamberlain was 46, I think, 46, 47 years old. And he was playing in a scrimmage with the Showtime Lakers. This was when Magic and all the, Magic was younger. And I think one of the players managed to get a dunk over Wilt, right? I think Wilt was kind of playing half-assed. And then Wilt said, after they were trash to him, said, after this, nobody's going to get a layup or dunk on me. And Magic Johnson said this now. He said, for the rest of the scrimmage, even at that advanced age, Wilt was blocking everything. But people say we capping though. You guys remember the guy that supposedly has a record for blocks in the season, Mark Eaton, right? Mark Eaton talks about an encounter. Now remember, Mark Eaton was 7'4". They called him Mountain Man. 7'4", 275 when he first was drafted, almost 300 pounds, Mountain Man, right? He said he went up against Wilt Chamberlain one time in practice, and Wilt was about the same age, about his maybe about mid-40s, late 40s. And he said that Wilt was backing him down. He said he never had anybody do it before. He said Wilt was in the post and was backing him down like he was a little kid. Like he literally lifted his feet off the ground. And he said he never had anything happen. He said he never experienced any guy be able to do that to him before. But I think he said it was Wilt Chamberlain that told him, look, you have a talent. You might not be offensively a great player, but you have the build and the ability to be a great defensive and shot blocker. And Mark Eaton went on to win Defensive Player of the Year, I think twice, it was, and set the official NBA record for blocks in the season, 5.6, I think, per game. Let's see. Yeah, Wilt was receiving NBA offers, man, when he was 50 years old. Yeah. And the funny thing about it, when I was growing up, the GOAT argument, the way it is now with LeBron versus Wilt, got kicked off for a second. Any matchup? Prime Kobe versus Prime Jordan. That's the one I want to see. Those two go after it. That would be one hell of a matchup. I don't think Jordan would be able to stop Kevin Durant. I mean, I don't know if he'd be able to stop Kevin Durant. I mean, Kevin Durant's just his height, man. It's just, I don't know. Oh, George Marcus, isn't that the moniker that Wilt Chamberlain used to play in pro games when he was still a teenager? Yeah, I've heard of that moniker. That's the thing. This dude was what, 15, 16 years old or something like that. Now, how old was he? 17 years old playing in pro games as a kid. And another thing you got to remember too, give me 1 second. Another thing we got to remember too is when Wilt Chamberlain played, um, college players couldn't come out of they couldn't leave early, right, and go to the NBA. So that's why Wilt played with the Harlem Globetrotters for a year before he entered the draft in 1959, which would have been the year he would have gotten out of college. So let's just say if Wilt started in 58 instead of 59, right, playing the NBA, and let's say he never switched up his style and he just stayed a scorer, you know, still leading the NBA in scoring or being second in scoring, maybe to Kareem a couple years, still putting up 30 points per game until like maybe 70 or whatever, and then maybe still like 25, 27 points a game to his career, right? How many points we have had? Like instead of 31,419, maybe he scores 40,000. Will willingly change his game to sacrifice his scoring. So I mean, there are a lot of things we gotta look at with this guy, man. Like it's I don't know, man. There's a lot of stuff I could talk about, man, but it's just he really deserves to be in that conversation. And I'm noticing that the media today, they're taking the center position out of the equation. Like, remember last year when ESPN had the audacity to say that Michael Jordan was the greatest college player ever? And even the most passionate Super Bulls fan, Jordan fan, with the exception of Skip Bayless capping ass, will tell you that Michael was not the greatest college player. The greatest college player is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Wilt Chamberlain was a greater college player, in my opinion, than Michael Jordan. But they gave it to Michael Jordan. And that's the agenda I'm talking about, man. These people really don't care about giving you an accurate representation of sports. They're just out there to push a product. And you know, Michael Jordan still get views, and if you press it, you know, it's about views and ratings and all this crap, man. Man, yeah. It makes you wonder, man. I'm gonna tell you something else too. Now I know if I say this, right? If I say this, people gonna say, "Oh man, this nigga capping for Wilt, man. This nigga capping for Wilt." I'm just telling you. I'm not saying maybe he won't do it in the game. I'm not saying that he'll do this in the game. Okay, maybe because some people can do things in practice they can't do it in the game. I've heard that Shaq could shoot free throws pretty well in practice, not in the game. So I'm not saying he'll do this in the game. But I've heard teammates say that what's considered deep range threes now, Wilt would shoot from that range in practice and make them. I remember I can't remember what teammate it was. Was it was it was it Al Addles? One teammate of his said that he saw Wilt hit something like, I can't remember how many in a row. Was it 10 or 11 hook shot threes in practice off of a bet? So what I'm saying is, who knows, man? Maybe in today's game, as strong as he is, he probably was shooting from deep. Maybe he'll be, shooting threes and shit, man. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Scottie Pippen wasn't a good foul shooter, but he used to make threes. So I don't know. But all I know is great players would be able to adapt to whatever the game is. Wilt was already a great passing big man. He's a great rebounder. When he was younger, he had a touch from outside. I'm pretty sure that Wilt Chamberlain will be able to play in today's game. First of all, he has the athletic ability to play with these guys. He has nobody can question his physical conditioning. So I think he would fit in great in this era as, say, the Philadelphia Sixers version of himself, right? In the 90s, when Wilt was still alive, the reason why he said he probably would be so dominant is because he didn't have to worry about being double and triple teamed all the time. And like the way Shaq was playing, bulldozing guys, Shaq was like, Wilt was like, oh, I can do that now? That's why he said that I think could average 60 or 70. And, the last 10 games of the 61-62 season, Wilt Chamberlain averaged almost 70 points a game, including that 100-point game. So all I'm saying is this. Don't listen to these. I'm going to end this right now. I'm going to end this stream because I got some things I wanted to do, but I just want to talk to you guys right quick. What's up? Winners train, losers complain, LDBC. Much respect, man. Right. Well, yeah. But I understand what you're saying. I'm not denigrating Jordan. He wasn't averaging what he averaged in the pros because he was playing in the Dean Smith system. Hence that joke. Who was the only man to keep Jordan from scoring 20 points a game? Dean Smith. But what I'm saying, still, as a college player, to me, the greatest college players are Kareem, Bill Walton, which is the main reason why he's in the Hall of Fame, Elvin Hayes, who else I would put up there? Pete Maravich, just more or less because of his individual accomplishments. Shoot, I would have to even put Christian Laettner up there. Oscar Robertson. Those are some of the great college basketball players of all time. Jordan doesn't belong in that category as far as college. Now, when you talk pros, of course, he has a case for the GOAT. But all I'm saying is, I don't think it's as definitive as some people make it out to be when you really do your research. And like I said before, I'm ending on this. A lot of people talk about how Wilt only has 2 championships. But who else was winning in that era other than the Celtics? Jerry West didn't win any in that era. Nor did Elgin Baylor, nor did Oscar Robertson. The only ones to win titles in the Bill Russell era was Wilt and Bob Pettit. And that's one of the reasons why I say Bob Pettit is also criminally underrated. So that's all I got to say, guys. It's been nice talking to you dudes. And I see y'all later on, all right? Peace out.